So tell me, Yankee, why did you come to this horrible place? As close to nowhere that I've ever seen.
Let's just say, looking for someone.
Sacrificial lamb, you will receive our most sacred body. It begins now.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
RE4 Remake is finally here, and it follows the Raccoon City trilogy with a game that changed the series as a whole. Released March 23rd, 2023, I've invested over 70 hours, 8 different playthroughs, beating the game on all 4 difficulty modes, and unlocking all major weapons and S-ranking with all 4 mercenary characters in the new game mode. I think it's safe to say that early on, I absolutely recommend this game, and my bias is showing clearly. So let's start from the top and work our way through. As much as I love this game, there are minor flaws, but as a whole, it's a genuine remake in graphics, gameplay, and even some story elements. It also once again reinforces that remakes done right are some of the best games out there, even if they feed off the nostalgia. It comes as a surprise that this is a complete game from start to finish, a trend that infests the modern gaming industry with early access. Not to say that there aren't bad early access, it just leaves a bad mark on gaming as a whole. Visually, this is the best that the series has ever looked. Utilizing the RE engine, it has that perfect blend of photorealism that immerses you in the atmosphere and world. Objects, characters, models, weapons, physics, and even individual strands of Leon's hair. It's also heavily customizable while giving you a visual example of the change in the options menu as well, at least with the PC port. You can customize the game to ensure it runs smoothly on your rig with little to no issue. The only major issue I ran into was with the ray tracing. As much as it graphically improved the game in some areas, too much going on at once caused it to crash. This became immediately apparent during the Mercenaries game mode. Once it turned off, I haven't had an issue since and the game runs perfectly fine. It's also clear that a lot of effort was placed into attention to detail. Rain effects are natural and manage to blend into the world with relative ease. During combat, you can blow off limbs and even the upper torso or lower torso with ease. Tendrils floating about the separated part. Blood freshly covered Plagas, wounds briefly retaining on Leon's body after he's attacked. Even the detail in the weapons animation is something to behold. Whoever you are working at Capcom, God fucking bless you, lad. The weapons are not only the best I've seen in sheer graphical detail, but in the way that Leon uses those weapons too. Holding them with practical skill and the way he does a press check once he unholsters them. Be it handgun, shotgun, rifle, they all have different animations to ensure his weapon is good to go before he uses it. There's even a scene later on where a handgun is limp-wristed and it causes a jam. Once Leon picks it up, he ejects the mag, racks the slide, inserts the magazine, that includes a new round, and does a final press check. Whoever's on the weapons team, bravo. One of the key aspects that the development team wanted to focus on was bringing back more horror to 4 than its original counterpart. Let's be honest, there are maybe a handful of terrifying moments for a first-time playthrough in the original here and there, and with the remake, they've added a few more.
fuck?
Like before, the ambient sound is mostly just sounds of rural Spain. Sounds of rain on stormy nights, crickets in the evening, and the likes. Though, throw on some headphones and you'll be practically immersed in the world. Combat is a lot more visceral as well. With every melee attack, you hear powerful thuds and the occasional crack of bone when on the offensive. Even critical shots can have that raw sound that is oddly satisfying. On occasion, an enemy will vibrate violently on the ground, and you can choose to stab them. From there, you'll hear a harsh cry that definitely isn't human in nature. The gunplay is a different story. Most of the guns, especially the handguns and SMGs, seem to have a plinky effect to them, where you aren't really doing much damage, whereas the rifles and magnums are top-notch in this regard. You can actually feel the power behind them when they fire. When it comes to the music, this is where they truly shined. Using the framework of the 2005 soundtrack, they rebuilt and improved upon it, remixing it in various ways to breathe fresh life into it. They also managed to include a few tracks not mentioned in the OG. The shooting range music is a standout one that remixes a track from the opening of the OG while adding a twist onto it that gives it life. Plus, it gives that little incentive to perform just a little bit better at the range. While not all the camp is gone, because good fucking god, there is still some of it there, the remake has gone for a more grittier and down-to-earth tone that the remake series has adopted. This includes more horror than the original, though it doesn't really creep in till the island section, and one particular area.
What the fuck are you?
Allow me to introduce you to Regenerators, God's great gift to my dwindling sanity. My first time through, I knew what was coming, but still felt genuinely unnerved. Not Signalis levels of crazy, but enough to make me second guess my decisions. And it also looks like they installed a cake option in these creatures as well. Good fucking god. Another mechanic they revitalized was the Plaga mechanic. Having the enemies twitch violently as if they aren't dealt with, produced a different type of Plaga, which also includes various new nightmares to introduce as well. Some of them like to also crawl up on the wall, like a fleshy spider. There's a section that's a maze, and they bring back the terrifying enemy of dogs that don't bark but hunt you about the maze before pouncing on you when you aren't looking. Harkening back to the visuals that sync well with the atmosphere, the whole world feels a lot more grungy and lived in. The environments were all redone in the new RE engine, which produced the video game we all know and love as Devil May Cry 5. The village doesn't feel so abandoned compared to its OG counterpart, has much more life and character to it despite remaining brown most of the time, including flying axes. The castle has a more Alice in Wonderland vibe to me, and the Castellan clearly enjoys torturing his victims. Don't worry, we'll get to that soon. The island retains much of the core that remains in the original, with a few new additions here and there. Overall, they greatly improved the atmosphere, and though it doesn't have that lonely, desolate feeling the original does, it's still a much welcome improvement. This is where the largest divergence exists between the OG and the remake. Gameplay has been completely updated to fit the 2023 standards of gaming, though it's actually a complete game. Your standard gameplay loop still exists: shoot enemies, loot treasure, solve puzzles, and kill. A whole lot of killing. While you can move and shoot, the laser sight is gone, with the exception of 2 handguns, where the reticle shrinks for improved accuracy, though hit detection is spotty and unreliable at best considering. Melee has also your favorite moves back: roundhouse, front kick, and suplex for good old days of wrestling that give a satisfying crunch when enemies are defeated. The attaché case system is back with the same system as before. You can buy new cases to upgrade your inventory slots and even get special cases to increase drop rates on certain items. There are even charms that can be added to modify some behavior in the game, but we'll get to that. They even helpfully included an auto sword system, which I've hit a few times in frustration or panic. You can even map weapons to hotkeys rather than having to enter the inventory each time. The knife takes up space this time, giving you more to consider when hoarding like a dragon. Enemies will drop ammo, money, treasures, and health items to help assist you through your journey. Which brings us to...
Over here, stranger.
The good old merchant, which has had a few mechanics reworked since the last time we've seen him. He'll still upgrade your weapons, buy your junk, though with the new trade mechanics, some of that has changed. You can get special and unique items with spinels that are earned through the environment, killing special enemies, or completing a quest. Treasures have also been reworked as well. You can find individual gems or treasures that have slots in them to put said gems in them. Scattered throughout the map and giving you incentive to explore are special requests that, when completed, will give you spinels as a reward. You also have the ability to repair your knife and body armor at the merchant for a fee, which leads into the next part: durability. Your knives, unlike other games, can break, and while they are fairly versatile and powerful, they can break at the worst possible times. You can also find small knives around the environment to help offset that, or use them to create reusable bolts for the bolt gun. Speaking of the knife, the parry mechanic is also a new feature in the game as well, allowing you to block most everything with the cost of durability in exchange. On lower difficulties, the parry window is rather generous, but on professional, nothing short of a perfect will allow you to block. Performing perfect parries can also cause a stun, which can allow you to perform a follow-up attack. It's also a vital mechanic to later bosses, which haven't changed much at all. Lay hellfire into them until they die. They also introduce crouching into the game, which allows you to perform instant kill takedowns on some of the ganados to reduce the amount of enemies to potentially face. It can also help you avoid detection, but fighting is something you can't avoid forever. They even revamped the shooting range as well, and introduced the gotcha game. At certain points of the game, you have the option to go down an elevator to a shooting range with the opportunity to win tokens. There's also a new set of challenges, each new elevator, and new hells to witness. God bless mouse aiming. You can exchange these tokens to a machine to get charms that can be added to your attaché case. It can be something as minor as more ammo crafting chance to literally moving faster and parries performing critical damage, making some minor element of chance to each playthrough. Right, the elephant in the room. A pretty controversial topic in the original game is Ashley, who is the person you're tasked with escorting pretty early in the game. Though a few things were improved from the original, and a few were made worse with the rendition. We'll start with the good parts. Thankfully, you'll only have to manage your own health pool. Rather, she'll be knocked into a down state before a final kill hit. But you can bring her back up to full status with a simple button command, though stray gunshots are still lethal. Her dialogue and overall character were written to be much better than before, who isn't just a plain old doll who screams anytime she's kidnapped. She'll also be a part of certain puzzles and treasure areas where you'll need her help to proceed as well. The bad though, this is where I feel it starts to struggle a little. In the original game you had two commands, wait and follow me. If you had her follow, she stick to you like glue, and wait is pretty self-explanatory. You tell her to wait, she won't move at all. Her updated AI has her kept far or kept close, but the rubber band effect has a generous definition of what close is. The follow me command has caused a few resets because she refused to move on command. There was a certain level of charm that had the mouse go into the dumpster. However, overall, I think this rendition of Ashley was a rather powerful improvement over her OG counterpart in both writing and design, though some things weren't removed for our benefit. While many of the story beats do remain relatively the same in some regards, there are several changes that I feel makes it more grounded. Mainly the fact the cult doesn't magically hijack your communications to taunt you till the end of the game. Rather, it just happens to be bad weather doing it. Sadler, the major villain in the background, is just that, a background villain who is more than willing to send in his lackeys first before he'll be willing to confront you himself. Additionally, they hammer home the more religious aspect of the cult as a true believer angle, even if a majority of their followers have no free will to begin with. The cast itself also got a major rewrite, along with the dialogue, obviously, but it also gives each side character their own agency, and doesn't feel like they're shoehorned in for the sake of it. The one that immediately comes to mind is Luis Serra, whose background story is told through documents and is implied rather than said. However, with his addition in the remake, he feels much more fleshed out, and his backstory, while still hidden in said background, is much more believable than finding random notes about his supposed guilt throughout the story. Though, to really talk about the grander story, I'll need to get into the nitty-gritty of it, so if you don't want spoilers, go to here. As I said, many of the beats remain the same, but the biggest change comes fairly early. While Leon does get infected by the parasite, he also discovers fairly early on that Luis, the man that was captured with him, was a former Umbrella researcher. Another aspect I also enjoyed is the fact that Umbrella, the big evil corporation that surrounds the entire series, is nothing more than a footnote here, and isn't explained away by shutting down their GameStop stocks in Robinhood. They just quietly disappear from the spotlight. Ashley still gets kidnapped, of course, but her purpose is to spread the dominant strain of Las Plagas parasite when she's released back into US custody, which the remake still has an issue with. We still send a single government agent with so much baggage it could fill a train car, with 2 Spanish police escorts into a village to look for the president's missing daughter. Now, Leon is a bit more subtle in his attempts to look for her and explains it away as just someone. With that context, it makes sense why the government would just send one guy and not an entire Secret Service cat to go search for her. Global superpowers would be more than happy to blackmail the US with that knowledge. Though upon arrival in the village, the escorts are killed and everything goes to shit relatively quickly, forcing Leon to adapt and search for her by himself. He's not alone, with Luis occasionally guiding him along and Hunnigan returning as a support role. They guide Leon along to Ashley as the two head to the local castle where, well, it's not much better. The local Castellan, a descendant of the Salazar family whose role it was to keep the Plaga sealed away from those who would use it for malicious purposes, decides the opposite. Convinced by the local cult, his actions brought the Plaga back, to which he is subservient to the cult leader, Osmond Sadler. His story, at least how I read into it, were the primary vectors of the parasite, and the Sadler family was exiled, with Osmond returning to take his place as the head and intent on spreading the parasite globally, though he gets a little help from an American, Jack Krauser.
Long time no see, rookie.
Krauser here had the largest leap in development, and is the best character of this fucking game. The mentor of Leon and former Special Forces Major, he and Leon worked side by side until Operation Javier, which originally was a story in Darkside Chronicles in the original that helped to expand Leon and Krauser as characters, is now the turning point for Krauser. While details are scant in exactly what happened, it's known that Krauser and Leon were left to die by the government after their team was massacred, and the two only survived through sheer force of will and their training. While Leon moved on from it, Krauser didn't, and became disillusioned by his roles in the eyes of the government he had served, though he found new purpose, a role for himself under Sadler, and with that, he felt appreciated, he felt wanted. Krauser helped set up defenses on the island that serves as the final area of the game, and isn't just a pawn for Sadler. He is the true believer, and serves Sadler not as a mindless drone, but the blade that helps take care of the rats that scour his new vision of the world. If you couldn't tell, I love what they did with Krauser. Leon and Luis eventually team up in the tunnels of the castle, where Luis reveals his reason for helping Leon and Ashley. He feels overwhelming guilt for his involvement in working with Sadler, and after his entire team was turned, he decides to escape with a sample of amber, the source of the parasite, to have leverage for protection. Contacting a former associate who he believes is alive, he rather gets a hold of Ada Wong. A mercenary that was originally introduced in RE2R, she returns once more, dressed much more appropriately for the occasion, as the driving force for Luis to escape, and is working on her own agenda that has yet to be fully explained. I was hoping Separate Ways would have been announced by the time that this video dropped, but if future me editing this finds it does, well, shit. Unfortunately, Luis doesn't make it beyond the castle, where he's killed by Krauser, and Leon has a duel with him before being overpowered, and saved by Luis, who grants him a final gift, a key to his lab. Leon, like with Operation Javier, works his way through Sadler's goon, through sheer force of will, and eventually confronts his former master and wins. Facing the man himself, and finally removing the parasite from himself and Ashley, and escaping through a climactic finale. Though, beyond the hushed whispers, this operation will be sealed away and never talked about beyond the case file. Though, through an end credits scene, with Ada recovering the amber, has a conversation with her boss, Albert Wesker, who is very much alive despite his supposed death in the remake. His intentions are vague, but they involve the death of billions. Ada, having second thoughts about giving a madman a Plaga amber sample, forces the helicopter she escaped on somewhere else, saving everyone else from a fate unknown. Finally, Mercenaries Mode, a mode that has been revamped with 4 characters currently available to play as. Mercenaries in the original was a score attack that had you last as long as you could against endless waves of enemies with a limited amount of time to get the highest score possible, encouraging you to maintain combos and be as aggressive as you can. The new version is pretty much the same, with a few new additions. There is now a cap on the amount of enemies available and a special ability meter that grants you brief access to some powerful additions, which can vary depending on the character. Leon is your middle of the road in terms of weapons and abilities, with an extra power boost to his weapons. Luis lacks weapons, but makes up for it with TNT that can be spammed and shot. Krauser has his explosive bow and TMP, along with his powerful Plaga that can instantly kill mini-bosses. Finally, Hunk only has an MP5, but his iconic neckbreaker and unlimited ammo that doesn't require reloading. Yet 2 characters seem to be missing, Ada and Wesker. However, at the time of this writing, the remake on Steam has loaded in a few more achievements without any description, and has seemingly updated Ada's model, meaning that it's a very real possibility that Separate Ways is coming, though the when is still a mystery. The remake is definitely worth purchasing for the amount of content you'll be getting at launch, with new DLC coming soon. It'll be even more worth it then. Now all we have to do is wait for the RE5 remake that we know is coming. How they'll change that, I haven't a clue, though I know it will happen. Thank you all so very much for watching. The next review will be a love letter to one of my favorite series. Till then, have a good one, lads.